All right, so about a year ago, I was working a night shift at a small hotel, and something happened that still haunts me. It rattled me so much, and I can't stop wondering what that guy was up to. It makes my skin crawl when I think about how long he was there, and I didn't even realize he wasn't supposed to be. The hotel wasn't big, just 3 floors with around 40 rooms. It was rarely busy, with maybe 10 or 15 rooms occupied on weeknights. My shift ran from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., and it was usually pretty dull, which I didn't mind. I'd sit behind the front desk, handle some paperwork, glance at the security cameras now and then, or scroll through YouTube on my phone when it was super quiet. The lobby was simple. Just a desk, a few couches with a TV off to one side, and vending machines in the corner. Behind the desk was a small office with a computer, a chair, and a glass window, so I could keep an eye on the lobby. At night, the front doors locked automatically, and guests had to buzz to get in. I'd hit a button to let them through. Most nights, nothing happened after midnight, except maybe a guest coming in late. But one night, around 11 o'clock, this guy showed up, and just thinking about it still makes my stomach churn. He buzzed the door, and I let him in. He was in his mid-40s, tall, kind of lanky but not too thin, wearing jeans, a baseball cap, and carrying a backpack. He walked up to the desk and asked if we had any rooms available. I said yes, told him the rate, and he nodded, handed me a credit card. I swiped it. It seemed to go through, and I gave him a key card for room 214 on the second floor. I noticed he stared at me a bit too long before heading off, maybe 3 or 4 seconds after I handed him the key, with this blank look in his eyes. Then he turned and headed to the elevator. It didn't scream danger right away, but it was enough to make me uneasy. After that, I went back to my chair and messed around on my phone. Around midnight, I glanced up and saw him back in the lobby. He didn't approach the desk, just walked by and plopped down on one of the couches in the lounge area. The TV was off, but he sat there facing it. I figured maybe he couldn't sleep. Some guests hang out in the lobby, so I didn't dwell on it. But after about 30 minutes, I noticed he was just sitting there, doing nothing. No phone, no book, not even dozing, just staring at the blank TV screen. At one point, I got up to grab a water from the vending machine. As I crossed the lobby, I could feel his eyes tracking me the whole way. I didn't look at him, but the weight of his stare was unsettling. I got back behind the desk, feeling uneasy. Around 1 a.m., I was bored and poking around the reservation system on the computer when I noticed something odd. I checked the occupied room list, and room 214 was marked vacant. I muttered to myself, confused, because I had just checked this guy an hour ago. Thinking I'd messed up, I checked the check-in logs. Nothing. No name, no record, no charge. I even looked at the transaction history, and there was no payment from his card. I was baffled because I distinctly remembered swiping his card and hearing the approval beep, but the system showed nothing. I picked up the phone and dialed room 214. It rang about 10 times with no answer. Then I checked the key card entry log, which tracks when a room's door is open, and it showed no activity. He hadn't even gone to the room. I glanced at the lounge, and there he was, still sitting, staring at the blank TV. A sick feeling hit me. I sat there, trying to figure out what to do. Part of me wondered if the system had glitched, but the lack of an entry log or payment made it clear he wasn't checked in. I kept an eye on him for another 15 minutes. Around 1:30, I walked over and asked if he was all right. He turned, looked at me with no expression, and said he just couldn't sleep. Then he went back to staring at the TV. I nodded and returned to the desk, but my hands were trembling. By 2 o'clock, he was gone from the lounge. My heart sank because I couldn't see him anywhere in the lobby. I scanned the area and then spotted him at the end of the hallway near the bathrooms, half hidden in the shadows, just standing there. I kept glancing at him, pretending to work on the computer. He stayed there for a bit, then slowly walked back to the lounge and sat down again like nothing had happened. I called my manager at home and told her what was going on. She sounded groggy and told me to watch him and call the police if he did anything threatening. I hung up, thinking it already felt threatening, but I didn't know what else to do. I checked the cameras after that. I saw him on the first floor hallway camera, walking to the end, standing there for a few minutes, then walking back. Later, he went into the stairwell and stayed there for about 10 minutes. I have no idea what he was doing. Every time I looked up, he was somewhere else, near the vending machines, by the elevators, or just standing in a dimly lit corner of the lobby, always staring. By 3:30, I was done. I called a non-emergency police line and explained there was a man in the hotel who I didn't think was a guest. They said they'd send someone. While waiting, I noticed he'd moved closer to the desk, standing about 15 feet away, just watching me. He barely blinked, and he didn't say a word, just stared. I pretended to type, but I was so scared I could hardly breathe. Around 3:50, the buzzer went off, and I thought it might be the cops, but it was just a late guest. I let them in quickly, and the man turned his head, watching the guest cross the lobby. His eyes followed them the whole way, which freaked me out even more, because it felt like he was analyzing them. A few minutes later, he was gone again. I checked the cameras and saw him standing outside a guest room on the first floor, just standing there. That's when I called 911. I told them he was outside a guest door, and I didn't know what he was up to. They said officers were coming. I kept watching the camera feed, and he stood at the door for about 3 minutes before slowly walking back to the lobby. When he returned, he came right up to the desk, leaned over the counter, and asked in a low, unsettling voice if we had any food. I told him about the vending machines in the corner. He gave a small smile and walked away. I sat there, staring at the clock, praying for police to arrive. Finally, around 4:10, 2 officers showed up. I let them in and pointed to the guy, who was back in the lounge, sitting down. They went over, talked to him for a few minutes, asked for his ID, and asked questions I couldn't hear. Then they escorted him out. One officer came back and told me the guy wasn't a guest. The card he'd given me was stolen, and he had no bags or reservation, just pretending to get access to the building. They charged him with trespassing and possession of a stolen card. After they left, I sat there, shaking, until my shift ended. Every time I checked the cameras, I half expected to see him again. The worst part was realizing he'd been wandering the hotel for hours, standing outside guest rooms, watching me from different spots, and he was never supposed to be there. I still don't know what he was planning, but it wasn't good. That was the most terrifying night of my life. Music. My name's Meredith, I'm 24, and I work nights at a small gas station off County Road 11. It's the kind of place people only stop at if they're desperate for gas or completely lost. I took the job because it was quiet and predictable, and I liked that, at least I did before. It started one Thursday night around 1 a.m. The air was damp and heavy, and the buzzing fluorescent lights were getting on my nerves. I was about to heat up a cinnamon roll I didn't even want when the door chimed. A man walked in, maybe mid-40s or older, wearing a green coat, with messy hair and chapped lips that looked like they hadn't curved into a smile in years. He didn't go for the coffee or snacks like most customers. He just stood near the counter, staring at me with this odd, familiar look. "Hi," I said, forcing a smile. He said, "You're always here this late." I blinked and replied, "Yeah, pretty much." He smiled faintly and said, "I thought so. I've driven by a few times. Always see you here." That unsettled me, but I didn't let it show. "Small town, right?" I said. He didn't leave. "Meredith, right?" he added. I froze. I wasn't wearing a name tag. Before I could ask how he knew, he pointed at the whiteboard where I'd written, "Cinnamon coffee is back." "You've got nice handwriting," he said. "Most people use circles to dot their I's. You use little slashes. It's unique, careful." I didn't say anything. He didn't buy anything either. Just stood there for another minute, watching me like he was studying my every move. Then he nodded. "I'm Paul," he said. "Just curious, that's all." Then he walked out into the fog. After that, he started showing up sporadically. Not every night. Not enough to scream stalker, but often enough that I stopped thinking it was random. Sometimes he'd come inside. Other times, he'd just sit in his car at the edge of the lot, headlights off. One night, I tried to ignore him. He came in, bought a water, and lingered as usual. "You're quiet tonight," he said. Long shift. I mumbled. He slowly scanned the store, like he was cataloging everything. Must get lonely out here. Just you in the dark. Nobody around for miles, he said. I'm fine, I shot back. He leaned on the counter. Ever get scared, being a woman alone at night? His tone wasn't menacing, which made it creepier. It was calm, like he was asking about the weather. I stepped back and said, Need anything else? He tilted his head. You always lock the back room door. Smart. I've noticed you check it around 2 a.m. almost every night. My stomach twisted. I didn't respond. I'll let you get back to work, he said with a soft, almost sorry smile, then left. After that, I started walking to my car with my keys gripped like a weapon. I stashed a tire iron under the counter. I changed my apartment curtains and started locking the bathroom door when I showered, even when I was alone. Some evenings he didn't show up. There were stretches, sometimes a full week, where I wouldn't catch a glimpse of him. But that only made things harder. The uncertainty of when he'd return gnawed at me, like the time I stepped back from a quick 10-minute break and spotted a Polaroid left on the counter. It captured me pouring fluid into the windshield washer tank behind the gas station. The shot was from that same night, taken from an unsettlingly close distance. No note came with it, but a red pen had circled the slash in the word I and the word windshield on the tank's label. The next time he walked in, I told him to get out. I warned him I'd call the cops if he lingered. Paul just gave a slight nod. I understand. I've been too pushy, he said. My voice wavered as I shot back. You've been stalking me, and I despise how fragile I sounded. He replied, I just think you're someone who's often misjudged. I figured you'd value someone who notices the details. That's not noticing. I snapped. That's fixation. He didn't even blink. Would it feel better if I showed up grinning with a soda every night? Would I seem less strange if I stuck to sports talk and acted like I didn't see how your shoes are always a bit too big or how your left eyelid flutters when you're exhausted? By then, I was already punching 911 into the phone. He didn't try to stop me. The police arrived fast, and he didn't put up a fight. He just stood there, arms relaxed, waiting. They searched his car and found a notebook crammed with dates and times, my work schedule, details about my walks, my outfits, my shopping trips. One page was just my name, scrawled repeatedly in increasingly frantic loops until it dissolved into scribbles. He kept telling the officers, I was just observing. I'm a curious person. That week, the restraining order was granted. I stopped working night shifts. I even moved to a different town. The company reassigned me to a station 2 hours away. Yet, even now, when I'm driving home and headlights trail me too long, a prickle runs down my neck. Sometimes, I still hear the way he said my name, as if he'd rehearsed it, like it already belonged to him. Let me start by saying this all happened to me just last night as I'm writing this. I worked the overnight shift at a 24-hour gas station. I'm a 22-year-old woman, and I've been at this job for just under 2 months. I cover the weekend shifts Thursday through Saturday, while my coworker, who I'll call Max for privacy, handles Sunday through Wednesday. Around 2:30 a.m., Max and his friend, who I'll call Ben, stopped by the station for coffee and a quick hello. They'd taken some magic mushrooms a few hours earlier, so when they arrived, they were all laughs and giggles, which was honestly a blast to watch. While we chatted about random things, Ben mentioned a car parked in the lot, engine running but lights off, with someone inside. He said it was there before they pulled in. When he asked the guy about it, the man claimed he was waiting for a DoorDash order. That wouldn't normally raise eyebrows, since Dashers often wait while we prep orders. But what struck me as odd was that I hadn't had an order in nearly 2 hours. I'd been cleaning in the back of the store, away from the registers and front doors, so I couldn't see the parking lot. We brushed it off as no big deal, and Max and Ben stepped outside to smoke a cigar and mess around with Max's dog, which they'd brought along. At first, I didn't dwell on it, but once I was alone, it felt a little strange not knowing how long that car had been out there before Max showed up. About an hour later, they came back for more coffee. That's when Max shared more details. The car had been parked in a spot I couldn't see from the register, hidden by a wall. He said that the whole hour they were outside smoking and playing with the dog, the guy in the car kept switching between watching them and tapping away on his phone. In his still high state, Bennett walked over and asked, "What's going on? Why are you staring at us?" The man first acted like he didn't speak English. When that didn't hold up, he switched to English, mumbled something about having the wrong address, and sped out of the lot. Max, who was admittedly higher than Ben, noticed the car looked brand new and had no license plates. He also spotted a heap of blankets in the back seat, piled high enough to conceal someone. And right as the first car peeled out, another car, also looking new, also without plates, pulled into the lot with its lights off and followed the first one out immediately. Max and Ben stayed another 15 minutes, warning me to stay cautious and keep an eye out before they left. Around 6 a.m., Max returned for more coffee, now fully sober. We talked more about the incident. He said the guy had been acting shady the entire time, constantly checking his phone while eyeing them, the parking lot entrance, and the store doors. Even Max admitted it creeped him out, especially once he was clear-headed. He'd come back to check on me, worried about my safety. We both agreed that if Max and Ben hadn't been there, things could have gone any number of ways. I don't know if it was just a weird coincidence or if those two cars were planning something once I was alone. I carry a knife for protection, but from what they described, if there were multiple people involved, it might not have been enough. If Max and Ben hadn't been goofing around in the lot, like a couple kids, something awful might have happened. I'm working again tonight, and I'll let you know if anything else comes up. I didn't want to have an update, but I do. The car showed up again during my shift. Here's what happened. Around 3 a.m., I was mopping the floors when 4 guys came in for coffee and snacks. While ringing them up, one asked if I knew about the car idling with its lights off at the far end of the lot. I looked at him and asked what car he meant. He described what sounded like a brand new Subaru, no plates, with 2 guys who seemed to be arguing in the front seats. My stomach sank. I told him a car matching that description had been in the lot the previous night, but with just one guy. The man, who seemed to be the group's leader, said they'd noticed the car when they pulled in to pump gas. It was still there as they filled their truck. As they walked past it toward the store, since they parked at the farthest pump, they overheard a guy talking loudly, pointing at the store's doors. When one of their group started approaching the car to check if everything was okay, the men inside noticed, threw the car into reverse, and sped off. I shared that I thought it was the same car from the night before, acting suspicious when others were around and panicking when confronted before speeding off with another car tailing it. The group seemed concerned and offered to stick around for a bit to ensure the car didn't return. I asked if they were sure, and they said it was no trouble. They stayed for about 20 minutes until we figured I was probably safe. I thanked them, let them refill their coffee for free, and they left, leaving me alone again. Nothing else happened during my shift, but I was hyper-vigilant when I had to go outside to swap the trash bags at the pumps. What unsettles me most is that I never saw the car myself, only heard about it from others who warned me. At first, I hoped I was just being paranoid, and it was nothing. But having the same car appear 2 nights in a row, at nearly the same time, parked in a spot invisible from the register or front windows, makes me think my unease might be warranted. If it is, I'm just grateful another group showed up, so I wasn't alone if those guys had decided to come inside. I'm off the next few days, and I'm hoping that when I'm back on shift, that car stays gone till I'm Ethan, 29 years old, and I work the night shift at a quaint, family-run motel in a rural area. It's a small, independent place with 2 stories and about 25 rooms. My shift runs from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. The motel stays pretty quiet at night, with maybe a late check-in or 2 after midnight from travelers passing through, but it's mostly silent. That's why I chose this job. I'm not much for socializing, so spending my nights in a nearly empty building suits me just fine. The setup includes a front office with a check-in desk, a few chairs, a coffee maker, and a small stand with local brochures. A hallway behind the desk leads to a back room that feels like a cozy lounge, complete with another desk, a sofa, a mini fridge, and a wall-mounted TV. There's a speaker in the back that chimes when someone rings a bell at the front desk, so I usually hang out in the lounge, watch shows on my laptop, maybe catch a quick nap, and head to the front when the bell sounds. I've been here long enough to know the motel's usual noises. The occasional creak of the building, the heater's soft clicking, and the buzz of the front door when a guest uses their key card after hours. Those sounds are normal, but working the night shift can make even familiar noises feel eerie if you dwell on them too long. And sometimes, things that seem ordinary at first turn out to be anything but. This happened on a chilly Tuesday night in autumn. The temperature was in the 40s, and the parking lot held just 4 or 5 guest cars. Around 2 a.m., the bell rang. I got up from the sofa in the back and walked to the front office, but no one was there. The lobby was empty. I peered through the glass doors, but the road outside was dark, with no cars, headlights, or movement. The bell's sound is sharp and unmistakable, so I knew I hadn't imagined it. I stood there for a moment, expecting a late arrival, but no one showed. I returned to the lounge, sat on the sofa, and scrolled through my phone. Less than 10 minutes later, the bell rang again. I hurried to the front, but the lobby was still empty. A chill ran down my spine. I stepped outside to check the parking lot. Same cars, lights off, no movement. The road was deserted. I walked to the edge of the sidewalk, scanning both directions, but saw no signs of anyone. Back inside, I decided to stay at the front desk instead of returning to the lounge. Maybe some prankster, perhaps a guest kid or drunk, was messing with me, playing a game of ding-dong ditch. After 15 minutes of nothing, I started to relax, leaning back in the chair with my laptop open, thinking it was just a strange moment I'd laugh about later. Then the bell rang again. My head jerked up so fast it stung. The lobby was empty, no one in sight. My skin prickled. I got up, checked around the desk for anyone hiding, and even looked in the lobby bathrooms. Nothing. I stepped outside again, shining my phone's flashlight across the lot, but it was silent. Back inside, I decided to change tactics. I sat right behind the front desk, determined to catch whoever was ringing the bell. I dimmed the lobby lights and waited, ears straining. Every sound, the ticking wall clock, the hum of the back office fridge, the building's occasional creak, made me flinch. I sat there, arms folded, staring at the bell. 15 minutes passed, then 20. My eyelids grew heavy, and I started to think the prankster had given up or I'd imagined it all. Just as I began to doze, the bell rang again. This time I saw it. A pale hand rose from under the desk, reaching over the counter to press the bell right in front of me. I leapt up, nearly knocking the chair over, and sprinted down the hall to the back office. I slammed the door, locked it, and stood in the dark, heart pounding. My mind raced. How could someone fit under the desk? It's cramped, but someone could squeeze in if they crouched. They'd been hiding just feet away, waiting. I forced myself to check the security monitors. There were 4 feeds, one for the lobby, one for the hallway, and 2 for the parking lot. The lobby feed showed the chair I'd knocked over my panic. The counter looked empty. Then, in the corner of the screen, I saw movement. A head peeked out from behind the desk. I couldn't see details, just a shadowy outline, and a glint of eyes staring into the camera. I backed away from the monitor, unable to look, hands shaking. I called 911 and whispered to the dispatcher that someone was in the lobby. She told me to stay put, and that police were coming. While on the phone, I glanced at the monitor. The head was gone. Then I saw someone crawl out from behind the desk on all 4s. It was a tall figure in a hoodie, hood pulled tight, moving with a hunched posture. They stood, walked around the lobby like they were searching for something, then moved out of frame toward the hallway leading to the back office. I pressed myself against the locked door. The knob rattled once, slowly, then stopped. The dispatcher kept asking if I was okay, but I couldn't speak. My throat felt tight. After what felt like an eternity, I heard footsteps retreating. On the monitor, the figure was back in the lobby, pacing. At one point, they stood by the glass doors, staring outside as if expecting someone. Then they walked to the brochure stand and flipped through the pamphlets, almost mockingly killing time. Minutes crawled by. Finally, I saw flashing red and blue lights on the parking lot cameras. 2 police cars arrived. The figure must have seen them, too, because they darted out of frame. I heard the front doors open. The officers searched the building and found a large rock near the front door, likely used to prop it open, but the person was gone. They checked a lot in the road, but the officers said whoever it was must have slipped away when they arrived. I keep replaying that moment. The hand calmly pressing the bell. Now, every time the bell rings at night, my mind goes back to that experience. I'll never see that desk the same way again.